The NBA draft is a glorious time for the teenagers and young adults that will soon be making millions of dollars in endorsements and basketball contracts. However, this is for only 60 players. Unlike the NFL, NHL, and MLB drafts, the NBA draft only goes 2 rounds. That means there is an extremely limited availability for the large amount of talent that is expected to get drafted. Few will get picked, and many will get left behind. That's why I am here to dedicate this particular piece to the players who went undrafted and still managed to become relevant NBA players due to their work ethic and strong commitment to excellence. Even after they were passed over, and some forced to play overseas to make ends meet, they still maintained the idea that they were ready for the NBA. Sure enough, these 10 players were ready. While they don't have the glitz and glamour of your average all-star, they have modeled themselves into solid role players who have found a niche helping out their team. Whether it's passing, scoring, or defensive skills, these 10 players utilized all the talent and potential they had to make it to the NBA. I take the time to honor the 10 best undrafted players in no particular order. First up is Brad Miller, a graduate from Purdue who made his NBA debut midway through the 1998-99 season. Brad Miller has had one of the most successful careers of any undrafted player. Following 4 productive years with the Boilermakers, Miller would make his professional debut in Italy with Bini Viaggi Livorno after failing to get drafted. The Charlotte Hornets must have liked what they had seen in Miller and decided to become the first NBA team he would play for. It would last 2 seasons before Miller signed with the Chicago Bulls for the first time. Following 2 quiet seasons in Chicago, Miller broke through upon getting traded to the Indiana Pacers and would average 14 points and 8 rebounds in just his 4th season. He'd also make his first 2 consecutive All-Star appearances in 2003. Miller would then go on to play for the Sacramento Kings, where he would have set his career high in scoring and rebounds at 15.6 and 10.3. He would have his best year starting for the Kings and would average as much as 13 points and nearly 10 rebounds at the age of 31. Since getting traded by Sacramento in 2009, Miller has played for 3 different teams. Miller is now retired, and he's made $90 million over a 14-year career as a player who started out his career in Italy. Next up is Udonis Haslem, a hugely successful undrafted player on account of his team achievements. Udonis Haslem has become known as the Warrior among the Miami Heat community. It's obvious why he's called that. He's the fighter for the team, the player with the most heart, grit, and determination. He spends more time lying down on the court than standing on it. Haslem is the definition of an energy player, and it shows every time he is on the court. If you ever needed a player that will stand up for his teammates or do the little things necessary to win, Haslem is the perfect player for that job. Haslem went undrafted after 4 solid years at the University of Florida. His professional career appeared ready to hit a steady slope after he reportedly weighed in at 300 pounds upon leaving the Gators. Since no NBA team required his services at the time, Haslem played in France and would lose 70 pounds. The weight loss earned him workouts back home. Udonis ended up signing with the Heat a few months prior to the start of the 2003-04 season. He would start in 24 games and average 7 points and 6 rebounds, far more than what anyone had expected at the time. The next season, he'd play in and start 80 games and would finish the season averaging 11 points and 9 boards. Haslem would then help the Heat win a title for the following year, providing the team with a huge boost thanks to his physical defense on Dirk Nowitzki. Even though Haslem has dealt with significant injury during his career, he still managed to play a key part in the Heat's 2012 championship run. Next up is Bruce Bowen. Bruce Bowen didn't start playing in the NBA until he was 25 years old. His first season came with the Miami Heat in 1996, where he would play in 1 game and record 1 minute and 1 block. Bowen was dropped by the Heat following the conclusion of his 10-day contract with the team. He would then get signed by the Boston Celtics 4 months later. He would play 2 seasons with the Boston Celtics before choosing to sign with the 76ers 2 years later as a free agent. He'd play only 29 games with the team before getting sent to Chicago. The Bulls waived him 2 days after the trade went through. Then his breakthrough occurred. Bowen signed with the Miami Heat for a second time, and his defensive accomplishments were finally put on full display. In his first full season with the team, Bowen played in 82 games and earned a nod to the all-defensive second team. It would be the first of 3 consecutive. He was already 29 years old. Bowen would depart for the San Antonio Spurs and would immediately get thrust into the starting lineup as the team's small forward. 1 year later, he would become a starter for an NBA champion, as the Spurs would win the 2003 NBA title over the New Jersey Nets. Bowen would lead the league in three-point percentage in the same season. Bowen remained a starter for the Spurs until 2009. He was traded to the Milwaukee Bucks, waived a week later, and retired. Over the final 7 years of his career, Bowen missed a total of 3 games. The player who could barely hold a job in Europe from 1993 to 1997 and hailed from California State University ended up with 5 consecutive appearances on the All-NBA Defensive First Team and 3 championships. Next up is Ben Wallace. Ben Wallace was such a prolific rebounder and defender. Big Ben was never called upon for his offensive repertoire, however. Despite being only 6'9", Wallace was asked to become the starting center for a contending Detroit Pistons team because of his defense and rebounding capabilities. The Pistons snatched him up after trading away Grant Hill. Wallace has spent the previous 4 seasons with the Washington Wizards and Orlando Magic. He averaged 12 boards per 36 minutes in the year prior to joining Detroit, and it was more than enough to persuade the organization to pick him up as their anchor. In his first year with the Pistons, Wallace won Defensive Player of the Year. In his second year, he won it again. He did the same in his 4th and 5th seasons to make it 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards in total. He would also earn 5 nods to the NBA All-Defensive First Team, 3 NBA Second Teams, and 4 All-Star games. He led the league twice in rebounding, as much as 15.4 per game. He also led the league in blocks per game after registering 3.5 in the 2001-02 season. Wallace also helped lead the Detroit Pistons to an NBA championship victory in 2004 over the heavily favored Los Angeles Lakers. Wallace's defense on Shaquille O'Neal proved to be a factor because his athleticism and timing would prove to be a major factor in the outcome of a 4-1 series win. Not bad for a guy who hails from Virginia Union. Next up is John Starks. John Starks should consider himself fortunate for going from an undrafted guard out of Oklahoma State to a starting shooting guard on a perennial championship contender. However, he also has to consider himself unfortunate for playing in the same era as Michael Jordan, who constantly denied Starks and his New York Knicks a championship. Starks would come close in 1994, but Hakeem Olajuwon and the Houston Rockets would topple the Knicks in 7 games in the NBA Finals. Even without a ring, Starks still set a huge benchmark for undrafted players everywhere. He spent 36 games with the Golden State Warriors in his first season and would then be out of the league the following season. He would end up spending time with the Cedar Rapids Silver Bullets of the CBA and the Memphis Rockers of the WBL before signing a deal with the New York Knicks. Starks impressed in his first season with the Knicks so much that he'd played all 82 games the following season. By his 3rd year with New York, Starks was a starting shooting guard on a Knicks team that was giving the Chicago Bulls a run for their money. Starks averaged as much as 19 points per game with the Knicks and would even win the NBA's 6th Man of the Year for the 1996-97 season, averaging 13.8 points and 2.8 rebounds. He would play with the Knicks up until 1998 when he was eventually traded to Golden State. Starks would end his career with the Utah Jazz, still giving quality minutes as a starter at the age of 35. Last up is Avery Johnson. Before becoming a championship contending head coach with the Dallas Mavericks, Avery Johnson was a championship-chasing player who switched teams 10 different times. Johnson's career was so unique that he actually had 3 different tenures with the San Antonio Spurs. He played with them for part of the 1990-91 campaign and part of the 1991-92 season before getting traded to Houston. Johnson then signed back with the Spurs in the following offseason, only to go out and sign with the Golden State Warriors the next offseason. Wouldn't you know it, the very next offseason, Johnson signs back with the Spurs and spends the next 7 seasons there. During that time, Johnson would average a career-high 13.4 points as well as 9.6 assists. He was also the starting point guard of the 1998-99 team that defeated the New York Knicks in the NBA Finals. Johnson's claim to fame as a player comes from that series when he hit a game-winning shot to close out the series in particular. Avery would sign with the Denver Nuggets in the 2001 offseason. He then went on to play for the Dallas Mavericks and Golden State Warriors before retiring at the age of 39. Before he joined the NBA, however, Johnson was a little-known 5'10" point guard who spent his college years at New Mexico Junior College, Cameron University, and Southern University. Johnson led the NCAA in assists in his senior year at Southern after averaging 13.3 per game. Johnson would go undrafted and would play with the Palm Beach Stingrays of the USBL before signing with the Seattle Supersonics in the offseason of 1988. That's it for today's Sportsmafia video. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, hit the circle button to subscribe to the channel. Hope you enjoyed.